Hey guys, this is Devin Schirm. I'm a results-based men's lifestyle consultant. I've dedicated the last decade of my life towards self-improvement, and I'm here to help you become the best version of yourselves. Today's topic is how to look more jacked.
Be self-taught and reinvent your life because you must. It is your life, and its history and the present belong only to you.
Let's be honest with ourselves here, gentlemen. Everyone always wants to be a little bit more jacked. I think it was a bro science joke from a while ago where it very succinctly stated the first day that you go into the gym is the biggest that you will ever be. It's absolutely true. But let's face it, unless you're running a bunch of steroids, it's tough to get jacked as a natural trainee. It takes a very long time, it takes a huge amount of dedication, and you're just going to have to be patient and stick with it. Not to mention that a lot of the muscle groups in particular that make you look more jacked don't necessarily have the most advantageous growth patterns as a natural trainee. So, what are we to do? The best thing to do is not to focus on the conventional muscle groups that you're constantly harped on to be working on all the time. So, it's not about developing big pecs or big biceps or getting really wide lats or big meaty quads. That's really not what makes you look jacked as a natural or even as a steroid using trainee. None of those muscle groups contribute to the overall appearance of mass, aestheticism, athleticism, and just strength. But Devin, you ask, are you telling me that the conventional muscle groups and all the conventional wisdom telling me to train X, Y, and Z is wrong? Well, I mean, to a certain extent. No one said that having big pecs or big biceps is going to look bad. You will absolutely look muscular and you're going to look good. But as far as the quickest way to add mass to look bigger and more powerful as a guy, those are going to be slow growers. Those are just not going to contribute to the overall massive appearance of your physique, particularly if you're wearing clothes. What we're going to discuss today are the 4 muscle groups that you can develop immediately to give you the most bang for your buck as far as developing your physique. Starting off at number 1, the neck. This is probably the most overlooked muscle. I train my neck usually 2 times a week in the gym, and other than my roommate and maybe 1 or 2 other guys that I've seen on a regular basis, I don't think there's a single other man that I see consistently ever training his neck, or at all. Face it, 99% of the time you guys are, I presume, wearing shirts. And what that means is your ripped, shredded abs aren't going to be visible except for that one time in a million that you're going to be at the beach in that perfect down lighting. Your chest can be seen through your shirt, but as far as the outline and everything, that's going to be hidden as well. And your upper arms have a better shot, but really you can't take full advantage of it when wearing a shirt either. But your neck, no matter what you're wearing, your neck is always visible. And the neck lends the most immediate just advantage in determining how massive and strong of a guy you look. If you guys don't believe me, Google really any wrestler. Wrestlers tend to have these very thick necks. They look like really tough dudes you don't want to mess with. Another example for a celebrity would be Channing Tatum. He's considered a very conventionally handsome, good-looking dude, and a big component of that is because he's a more masculine-looking guy. And the reason for his masculinity is because he's just got a naturally really thick neck. And it's kind of funny because the rest of his physique, by really hardcore fitness or bodybuilding standards, he's not a particularly muscular, really built dude. He just happens to have a very dense looking neck. So when he's wearing clothes, he looks like a much stronger, more powerful man than he probably actually is from a performance standpoint. The neck can be trained in a variety of different ways. Front, back, side to side. That's usually the main components, and there's more or less one really good exercise for each of those directions. As far as what you can be working on, generally speaking, you're going to go ahead and lie on a bench, and you're going to be grabbing a plate of whatever capacity that you can actually handle. Obviously, start lighter if you've never done this before. This is one area you don't really want to get greedy with the weight on and jack yourself up. While you can do left side and right side neck raises with a plate, really the big brunt, the big meat and potatoes that are going to give you about 80% of your neck gains are going to come from the front and the back. One is called the neck curl and one is the neck extension. The neck curl is done with you lying horizontally on a bench, like so. And you're going to be lying with the back of your head dipping off the back end of the bench. You're going to usually have a towel across your forehead because otherwise you're going to have a bunch of weight just right on the skin. And you're going to hold a plate of whatever poundage you can handle, and it's just going to be on here. You're going down, you're going back up, going down, going back up. What you're going to try to do is not lift with the arms. You're going to try to not contract in with the abs. We're not trying to make this a bicep, forearm, ab exercise. So handle what your neck can actually handle. And that's the first component. It's called the neck curl. And what it does is it trains the biggest musculature of the neck, which is called the sternocleidomastoid. It's kind of a mouthful. The other big neck training exercise, which is pretty much a must in your arsenal, is the exact inverse of the previous neck curl. This one is going to be very simple. Lying on the bench like so, and it's going to be facing down with the head going forward off the end of the bench. This exercise is called a neck extension, aka blowjob resistance training. Again, put the towel on the back of the head. You're going to put a plate there, and you're just resisting it on the way up and working the back of the neck that way. Both front and back are going to really account for the majority of what you need to be doing from neck training. You can throw in some of the right and the left side to side a little bit. Those you go much lighter because you're much weaker in that position, and it doesn't contribute as much overall neck mass musculature growth. So if you really just have to pick two, go forward and back, and you're going to see significant progress. The neck grows really quickly. Within just a couple of months, you can add an inch or two, depending really on your frame size and how big of a dude you are. And it will make a huge difference in terms of how you appear with and without your shirt on. Number 2, working our way down the body now, we are starting at the traps. The traps are the second best muscle group you can develop in terms of developing a overall massive, strong looking physique. There's you kind of notice all the dudes that look just really strong usually have really big traps. Strong men, huge traps. So a lot of like solid bodybuilders, at least the really big dudes, big traps. It's just kind of, you look at a guy with big traps and you're like, yeah, I wouldn't mess with that guy. He looks really strong. In terms of developing the traps, a mistake that I see a ton, like 95% of guys making, is that they go way too light. It's ironic. I mean, these are the same guys who are gonna load up 135 on a barbell and just try to cheat curl that all day, or they load up 275 on the bench and they half rep that with a spotter rowing it off their chest all the time. The same people who do that will go grab the 45-pound dumbbells and do these perfect, slow, controlled trap shrug contractions. It kind of blows my mind. It's like, if you're going to ego lift on something, traps are by far the best muscle group to ego lift with. Now, the traps are almost certainly going to be stronger than your grip. So whenever you do any kind of trap training, you're going to need to strap up. Get yourself a decent pair of straps, 10, 15, 20 bucks. It's not too big of a deal. Probably maybe even use chalk depending on how heavy you're going as well, and strap in. Your grip will almost certainly give out on either the amount of weight that you can lift or the amount of reps that you can grind out with a particular weight. Once you're strapped in, just go to war. Your traps can handle a ton of weight. After the glutes, your traps are the biggest, strongest muscle group in your body. And it really does blow my mind. I don't know why guys think like just squeezing some 50-pound dumbbells for the second biggest muscle group in your body is really going to do anything. I mean, these are the same guys who will bench press twice as much weight, even though that musculature is smaller and weaker than behind. But digression aside, go heavy with your traps. The traps, I have found in my own personal experience, don't tend to grow very much from the concentric portion, the contracting portion of the upward movement phase of the movement pattern, but they really grow from the isometric, that is the hold, and the eccentric, which is the negative portion of the reps. What traps tend to grow from is what's called a weighted stretch. They essentially grow the best from just resisting a lot of load for a particular time under tension. The other part about trap training, don't worry so much about having perfectly strict form. I see a lot of guys that'll load up a barbell, they're trying to make sure they get their perfect contractions going on, and they're going to stand there with no leg drive whatsoever, no body English whatsoever, and they're going to do these slow, controlled reps. The thing is, if you're exercising your traps in that fashion, you're not going to be handling enough weight. You're not going to be using enough weight to actually elicit that weighted stretch effect is the primary issue. Use some body English, use some leg drive. If you're holding enough weight, you shouldn't be able to just kind of strict form shrug the weight up. Use some body English, get some momentum, some leg drive going, and get the weight up there. Then when it's at the peak, you can resist the stretch on the way down. That's really what's going to elicit the most growth in your traps. Everyone's got their favorite trap exercises that they do. Mine, if I had to pick two, are going to be either some variation of a rack pull and some variation of a power shrug. And a power shrug is a regular shrug. It's just you're using leg drive and momentum to get the weight going. Really any grip width, what you prefer. It could be a standard grip where you're about here. You could go for snatch grip. I know you probably can't see it in the frame, but snatch grip where you're going about as wide as you possibly can. Doesn't really matter. It's whatever's most comfortable for you. You're going to hit different parts of the musculature, maybe a little bit more upper back with one variation over another. But any type of rack pull, particularly rack pulls above the knee, any type of power shrug is going to do your traps a lot of good, particularly if you're strapping in, throw in some chalk while you're at it, and go really heavy. Muscle group number 3, the upper back. The upper back is an often neglected muscle group. A lot of guys really just tend to focus on the lats. They think I'm going to get the lats really wide. I've got my wings going, and that's going to make me look big. And I'm not disputing any of that at all. But the upper back is what's really going to fill out your shirt and make you a lot bigger. Think Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. Bane really wasn't a super jacked guy. There's a lot more guys you'd probably see in your gym on a regular basis who are more muscular and put his physique to shame. But the reason why he appeared so intimidating is because besides his big traps, he had a big, wide upper back that just fills out the frame. It makes you look powerful. And generally speaking, there's a kind of a consensus of guys who have big upper backs are usually pretty strong. It's consistent across guys who are very strong powerlifters, guys who are strong men, the really built bodybuilders who are also strong, big, strong upper backs. I mean, you even think like a lumberjack. Lumberjack who's just swinging an axe all day probably had a big, strong back. If I had to decide between two exercises that are going to build the upper back the best, as far as what I've had in my own experience, if I had to choose two, I would go with probably the snatch grip power shrug. Again, this is kind of a twofer because it's going to hit the traps extremely effectively, but it's also going to hit the upper back because when you're grabbing it very wide like this, your upper back is under tension the entire time, and it has to isometrically stabilize the weight. So that's definitely one. The second one that I would go for would be very heavy single arm dumbbell rows. Another variation would be like a croc row. What you're going to do is, again, strap in. You strap in for back and trap exercises. Strap in, get a really heavy dumbbell, and you're going to have one hand up on the bench or on the rack or something, and you're kind of pulling the dumbbell high like this, pulling it up towards shoulder area rather than into the waist to hit your lat. Pulling it up to the shoulder area, that's going to hit traps and upper back the whole way. And that's how a lot of strong men have kind of accessorized their training to get a lot stronger. So once they can do that, their deadlift skyrockets, their back size increases, and they just get a lot stronger overall. And last, but certainly not least, are the forearms. Now, you guys remember that cartoon Popeye? Popeye really wasn't that imposing, jacked of a guy. He definitely skipped neck, trap, and upper back day. But what was the thing that really set him apart? It was his tumor-laden looking forearms. It's what made him his powerful, heroic self when the time came, and it's what really was the most defining characteristic of his physique. Much like the neck, your forearms are about the only thing that's visible most of the time when you're wearing a shirt. So it's conducive to you, it behooves you to train them as much as you possibly can. They're very, very slow to build. Just like your calves, they're arguably the most genetically gifted or cursed muscle group in the body. Some people have an easy time building big ones just by picking some stuff up. You deadlift occasionally, you've got big meaty forearms, and other times guys will do hours upon hours of direct training for years and they don't seem to budge. There is a general consensus though. I mean, you think of who are the guys that have the biggest forearms, it tends to be carpenters or mechanics. Basically guys that are just doing very high volume work and you're twisting or you're hammering or you're using your forearms for hours upon hours all day, every day for years or decades. That's what's going to build them. They're just very slow to go. So what exercises can you put into place to start building these puppies immediately? It's really going to be variable. It's what's going to work for you. Again, my own subjective opinion, the two best things I found that have given me forearm mass have been just holding really heavy things. So if you do really heavy rows, whether it's barbells, dumbbells, you're doing heavy rack pulls, you're doing heavy shrugs, power shrugs, snatch grip shrug, anything like that, even with straps, your forearms are going to get engaged when you're holding 400, 500, 600 pounds. It's inevitable. So that really works. As far as a direct forearm training, there's a few different variants of forearm-based curls that you can probably do. There's the standard hammer curl, where you're holding a dumbbell in a neutral grip and you're moving it up and down like this. That movement pattern. The other option is you're holding a barbell with a reverse grip. So instead of curling it this way, you're holding it this way and moving it the inverse direction. So, or the same direction, just with an inverse grip, pronated, double pronated hands. That's probably the other better bet you're going to do. There's a million different variations you can do as well. You could do the little wrist roller, where you're rolling up a rope and it's pulling the little 5 or 10 pound plate up. Absolutely exhausting. It's going to burn the hell out of you for doing that. So that works. You can always do the forearm curls, but generally speaking, the guys who do tons and tons and tons of isolation for the forearms but aren't lifting heavy, they're not going to build the same caliber of forearms as the guys that just lift really heavy stuff and get really strong, even if those guys never do any direct forearm work. So that's my recommendation. Lift really heavy stuff, train your back and your traps hard, and add in the accessories and the other variables if you need to. All right, guys, that's going to be a wrap for this one. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below. Share this if you found it helpful. Let me know as far as other topics you want to see me cover going forward, or if there's all the other muscle groups that I didn't cover you'd like me to talk about. But again, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.